I gave y'all all opportunity in the world. I mean, if they didn't even do it the 14th, before they even put him in the ground, they had the opportunity to come to my doorstep and say, Miss Wade, we getting ready to bury your son. I had to buy him back from the state. I had to pay $250 just to get his body rights back.
I know some of you may not be familiar with the Dexter Wade story. So before I play a statement which was given by the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, allow me to give you the details of this tragic situation. Dexter Wade left home walking with a friend around 7:30 p.m. on March the 5th. That was the last time his family saw him alive. On March the 14th, Dexter's mother went to the police department and filed a missing person report. His family continued to search for him, not knowing where he was. 172 days after his disappearance, Dexter's family was informed he had been killed less than an hour after he left home on March the 5th. Despite knowing Dexter's name and as well as knowing his mother's name, the police department withheld information about his death for months. On the night of March the 5th, as Dexter attempted to cross Highway I-55, he was hit by an off-duty police officer who was driving in a Jackson, Mississippi police car. Because Dexter didn't have any identification on him at the time of his death, the authorities claimed that they could not contact his family. On July the 14th, the authorities buried Dexter in a state cemetery. On August the 24th, the police informed Dexter's mother of his death, and she was just given the opportunity to visit his unmarked grave just this month in October. Here's a statement which was given by the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi. All I gotta say about this is, make it make sense.
I want to take a moment to recognize the fact that we have found ourselves in the national spotlight recently in the city. Many of you have heard of the tragic loss of Mr. Dexter Wade. I ask that you, one, give me a brief moment of silence as we recognize his passing. Thank you. Furthermore, I think it is important that we recognize the tremendous loss that his mother suffered and his family has suffered, and that we lift them up in our prayers collectively as a city, and that we continue to support them as a community. This is a tragic circumstance, and it is important that we understand what has taken place. Unfortunately, there was a tragic accident where Mr. Dexter Wade was walking across I-55 highway. While he was walking across the highway, an off-duty JPD officer unfortunately struck Mr. Wade and he passed. The accident was investigated, and it was determined that it was, in fact, an accident and that there was no malicious intent. Unfortunately, at the time, in addition to his loss of life, he was without identification, and the Jackson Police Department was unable to make an ID. The coroner's office later received his body, and they were later able to establish his identity through both fingerprints, and he also had a prescription bottle on him. Then there were efforts, after they located the prescription bottle, to reach out to the medical provider who provided that prescription. That medical provider provided a number which unfortunately was not accurate or not a good number to be used any further. And so they weren't able to make contact. Somewhere in the process of them trying to locate with that number, Mr. Wade's mother days later, filed a missing persons report. And the failure is that ultimately there was a lack of communication with the Missing Persons Division, the coroner's office, and accident investigation. And because of that, Mr. Wade, they were unable to find his family within a expeditious period of time, and he was later buried once the coroner went to the Hinds County Board of Supervisors in order to get permission to do so. And so it is tragic to lose your child. It is tragic to suffer the consequences of having to bury your child before you perish. But to add insult to that trauma, it is even more difficult to not have the ability to have a proper burial for your child. And for that, we regret the circumstance that Mr. Wade's family has had to deal with, and so we continue to lift them up in prayer. I do want to be clear that at no point have we identified or did any investigation reveal that there was any police misconduct in this process and that there was any malicious intent. And so it is important that we learn from these circumstances, that we identify ways to improve communication, but it is also important that we don't confuse with community issues of police misconduct in a circumstance which honestly was an unfortunate and tragic accident.